Good morning, welcome back to Building Red House Farm. So today is move-in day for our two resident horses, and before they got here I just thought maybe I'd give you a quick pasture tour and just talk more about kind of what I thought about for design and materials, and yeah, so here we go. So we'll start here at our gate. This is one of 3 gates in this pasture. This one's a bit smaller because I foresee it will be used a little bit more often. The other gates are right over there. And where's the other one? Over there somewhere. It's a bit blurry. And those ones are larger gates that connect into what will be larger fields eventually, so that we can rotate pastures easily and also get equipment through those gates. So this gate is a bit smaller. These are just pretty typical farm gates that you can get at a farm store. They're all like rounded so they can't hurt themselves on it, or it's hard for them to. I think they can hurt themselves on anything, almost anything, if they want to. They're not the big heavy ones that would be like for cows, so they're kind of a lighter farm gate, I guess you could say. So with our gates, one thing that happens with gates is sagging a lot, especially with the bigger gates. This one's not that big, so might not be such an issue. But to prevent that, we did put concrete in the ground for the posts the gate is hanging on, actually both of them. So if we need to switch the gate, we can do that. Both of these big posts on either side are set in concrete. And then I also have a little block, just railroad tie, that I prop the gate on usually when I'm not using it, and it just kind of takes the pressure off the post, so it kind of lifts it up. I can't show you that here by myself, but and hopefully that'll help our gate posts stay intact a bit longer. The other thing I thought about with the gates is we tried to get it really snug. So I don't know if you can see that. I tried to keep the gap pretty narrow just so they can't get a leg through there or anything. So kind of tried to think about those things. Worked pretty well on most of the gates. I think one we got a little bit long, so we might just put a 2x4 or something to fill in the gap on our one gate that has a bit of a bigger gap on it. The other thing we did as we were fencing, because our gate posts had to be a little bit higher, it looked awkward with the fence. We had these little posts connecting to the fence and these tall gate posts here, and it looked weird. So we just kind of angled the poles closer to it to help it flow a bit better. And then we might actually end up trimming some of the tops that were not exactly even, so it looks a little bit smoother. And then we'll probably treat those tops with something just so that they... And then for our fencing, you've seen some shots of our fencing. I've always been really preferential to wood fencing. I just really love the look of it, and it's one of the safer fences for horses. So I like these poles because they're just I like that they're round. Horses tend to chew them a bit less because there's not really an edge on them, so it's a little less fun, I think. These posts, a lot of them are recycled, so we pulled a lot of barbed wire fence out of our property. And these posts, any that looked like they still had some life left in them, we reused. So they're a little shorter than we were going for. We would have probably liked more like a 5-foot fence. These posts were only 7 feet, so 3 feet in the ground, and then that only leaves us with a 4-foot fence. We have some pretty tall horses, so I've just reinforced with some electric fence, which is on right now, so I'm going to attach it, just to kind of give them a little bit more of a psychological barrier for the fence, just because it is a little bit short for them. What else about fencing? I think that is it. I'll walk you down to a corner, because we did rounded corners, so I'll kind of show you how those look. They look pretty cool. Okay, so here is an example of one of our corners. We rounded them just to reduce areas where horses might get trapped. So most horses here will be out in groups if possible, so we just always want to make sure that they have room for the submissive ones to get away from the more dominant ones. So these rounded corners are really nice for that. So we did that all the way around except for the last corner, which I don't know if our math was wrong. but the rounded just didn't work. So we just kind of angled it off so it wasn't a square corner. This is our bigger gate here for equipment and that. I might regret this choice. This is a 16-foot gate, so it's pretty long and pretty heavy. It may have been smarter to go with like 2 10-foot gates, less pressure on the post. So I might live to regret that, but we'll see. And then we will walk over here to our water. So this water is almost done. It was the first water we installed, so we installed it. We left the electrical because we just had some questions, so we are having an electrician come out just to show us, give us a bit of a tutorial on the electrical so we don't mess that up. But it has water in it, float's working, all that. I chose this water because I've boarded my horses a lot of places, and here in Alberta, freezing waters in the winter is a big thing. It's cold here. You can hear me say that in every video. But I just noticed that wherever I went that had these waters, the water didn't seem to freeze. So I'm hoping that means it's a good water. It also depends on how they're installed, I'm sure, so we'll do a separate video on that. But I also like these ones because they got nice rounded edges and they're plastic, so they can't really bang their legs on them or anything, so that's kind of nice too. Okay, now we're walking up to really what is our pride and joy so far, because this took us so long, and it's probably the most complicated thing we've done so far, is this shelter. 3-sided shelter. Sounds pretty easy until you go to try and build it as really first-time builders. So this shelter sits right outside our kitchen window. We look at it all day long. Ken has a thing where he thinks horse shelters are kind of ugly. So we kind of tried to make it a little bit visually interesting by putting this porch on it, which initially was just for visuals, but now that it's there, I really like it for a couple of reasons. It helps keep the inside of the shelter shaded all day long. So this shelter is facing south. So normally it would get some sun in there during the sunny part of the day, but it stays sheltered or shaded in the back, which is really, really nice. So I like that. And then it gets a little bit of shade off the side. We got kickboards in here. I'm preferential to built-in shelters versus the pre-bought ones. The reason being is I like them a little bit taller and a little bit bigger, if possible. I also like that these posts, all the support posts are, again, cemented into the ground. So in a big windstorm, this guy is not gonna blow over, which sometimes those pre-made shelters do in a big storm. So if the horses aren't comfortable in there, they're not going to use it, and that kind of defeats the purpose. So I like the built-in ones for that reason. You don't have to brace them with chains or anything that might be unsafe. They're just solid as is. It's also taller, so this is like really, really tall. Like vaulted ceilings in here, it's great. I think it's 9 feet, 9 and a bit at the back. And then at the front, sorry if I'm making you motion sickness. Gosh, I think we're like almost 12 feet at the front. So it's really tall. We also made it 12 feet deep, so a little deeper than the pre-made ones. And that's, again, just our horses are bigger, so they can get their whole body in here and get a full windbreak, which is nice. And then it's 24 feet long. So basically like 2 12 by 12 stalls in here. I think the pre-made ones are kind of 8 to 10 feet wide usually. So this is just a little bit wider. I would not have closed this in, like this wall here, I wouldn't have closed this in and made it 24 feet deep by 24 feet long. Again, just because the risk of submissive horses getting in there and getting trapped, you want to keep it a little bit open if you're going to have a group. So that's why we kind of left this front porch open so that there's lots of room for them to get away. We also put the shelter right in the field, so sometimes you might see them like butted up against a fence so the horses can't get in and around them, and that's great in some situations. But this paddock really only has this one clump of trees that is fenced out. It creates a bit of shade and a bit of windbreak in one direction. but didn't really feel like that was enough. So by having the shelter in the pen, we get windbreak on all 4 sides and shade all times of the day, so they can always get away from the sun, which is good. And then I just made sure I put it so there's lots of room around the shelter. So again, there's really very little risk of any horse getting trapped in and around the shelter. There's lots and lots of space around it. On this side, I'm hoping I left enough space to get maybe a tractor in to clean the shelter out if we need to. But I didn't actually really think about that in designing it, but I think it's okay. So that probably just worked out by coincidence. Okay, the roof. You'll see our roof here. We put the fancy Ondura on here, which was not initially planned. But the things I was thinking about with roof was noise. And I know horses get used to noises, and that's not an issue for all horses, but some are really sensitive and some don't like to use a shelter in bad weather if the roof is really loud. So the metal roofs can be really loud that way. So originally we thought metal roof and maybe putting some plywood underneath to kind of dull down the noise. But wood is so expensive right now that actually the Ondura by itself was cheaper. So we got Ondura, which I think looks great. I love the look of it. I love how it smells. That might be weird. I just really love how asphalt smells. Don't worry, the horses can't smell the asphalt. I could really only smell it while we were installing it, which was great. But now that it's up, there is no smell. Last but not least, I put these little hooks in the shelter, nice and high up. So they can kind of be either a cross tie hook. We don't have a barn yet, so might be helpful if it's raining and the farrier's here to just be able to pop the horses in here in cross ties. Also in bad weather, I like to put hay nets in the shelters. So if it's really cold or it's gonna be really hot next week, like above 30 degrees Celsius, which in Alberta for our horses is really hot, I'll probably just put some hay nets in here. So if they just wanna stay cool and stay in the shade, they can just munch on some hay in here if they want to. So that was just kind of a little add-on I put. Other than that, I try to keep it pretty bare and pretty empty again, so there's nothing for them to hurt themselves on. These kickboards are higher than they probably need to be just because we reinforced some of the plywood on the outside with a nail I needed to cover up. And eventually I will paint these, and I'll paint them in a dark color like the board on the bottom to just discourage any flies from coming in and wanting to hang out in here. So that's the shelter. Spent the most time on that because we're really proud of it, and it has a great view. So I'm really excited to see how the horses use this. Both my horses are big fans of their shelter, so I spent a lot of time and attention on this part of their field. That's it. I'm gonna go and get the horses and we'll shoot a bit of a video of them settling in. Hopefully they like it here because we poured a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into just this one paddock. Thanks for watching.